Jackson with an interview with Anne Mawdsley on 31st of July 2014. And could you start by giving me your full name, place and date of birth?
My name is Anne Mawdsley. I used to be Anne Duckworth before I was married, and I was born in Ince-in-Makerfield at 54 Petticoat Lane on the 1st of June 1951.
Thank you. And can you tell me who you're going to talk about today?
I'm going to talk about my maternal grandfather, Thomas Wilkinson.
And do you know where and when he was born?
Yes, he was born in Washington in County Durham on the 19th of July 1881.
And can you tell me a bit about his family history? If he was born in Washington, do you know when he moved?
Yes, I believe that his mother and father came from Cheshire and they moved up to Washington for work. They had 2 children born there. My grandfather was the eldest, and his sister next down, who was Elizabeth. And when they were very small, they came back down to Lancashire, well, to Lancashire, not Cheshire, and settled in Hindley. And then they moved to Ince-in-Makerfield, to the house where subsequently I was born. So my mother was born there and all her brothers, yeah.
That's amazing, it's one house. And can you tell me, do you know when your grandfather enlisted and which regiment he served?
Yes, I've got the information. It was the Border Regiment, and I believe it was early 1915. He was a volunteer, and he volunteered along with his very good friend and neighbour, James Hill. James was killed almost straight away. When he went back a second time, I believe. That's a picture of James.
January
1917, yeah. I don't think they went over to France until 1916.
Right.
From the records we've managed to get. This is a war diary of the 2nd Battalion of the Border Regiment, which my grandfather and James Hill were in. And it gives where they were at a certain date and a certain time. And it's 1916 when they then went into the trenches. And at that time, my grandfather was taken ill with myalgia. Now, myalgia is general term, so we're led to believe, for all kinds of things from flea bite, which causes fever and inflammation of the joints and things like that. He was very poorly, and he was eventually, after going through 2 field hospitals, he was sent back home for a short time until he recovered, and then he was returned to France. He didn't come home as in home, he went to a convalescent hospital in Kent,
Right.
but he wasn't allowed to come home. And he went straight back, and then in, I believe it was 1918, he was badly injured and his leg was shot off, and that was when he was sent home properly.
Right. And do you know where he was when he was injured?
Well, we've had difficulty finding that, because when he was sent back, he wasn't sent back to the 2nd Battalion, because they'd moved on. And so he must have been sent to another battalion. The people at the Regimental Museum of the Border Regiment, they said that when my grandfather was injured, that the 2nd Battalion weren't at the front, so he must have had to join another battalion, and they can't find any record of at that time. They found a casualty list of him being injured. He's listed there, right at the bottom, Thomas Wilkinson. They sent us a photocopy of that.
Right.
But they can't really say what regiment he was in. They did suggest that we go to this other place for help to see if we could find out exactly where he was, but we've not been able to yet.
No. Would you mind reading a bit of that, the battalion
Yes,
diary?
of course.
Just to
Yes.
tell us, because that was when he was there the first time before he was
It's
there.
just a general sort of placement and where they were and when they arrived and who joined the battalion at that time. They had to be officers to be listed in these, obviously. It says 1916, May the 1st to the 5th. They were at Vaux-sous-Somme. The battle remained in billets. The battalion remained in billets. And then on the 6th, the battalion proceeded to shelters at Bois d'Etaille, arriving at 1 p.m. And then from the 7th to the 16th, they were at Bois d'Etaille. The battalion remained in billets, and Second Lieutenant B.L. Cumston joined the battalion on the 9th of the 5th, 1916. A draft of 50 other ranks joined the battalion on the 13th of the 5th, 1916. On the 17th, B and D companies and battalion headquarters proceeded to shelters at Grovetown. A and C companies proceeded to shelters at Groundtown. And then at Grovetown and Groundtown between the 18th to the 21st of May 1916, Lieutenant T.I. Wilson and 2nd Lieutenant G. Morrison and D.A. Gillespie joined the battalion. At Grovetown on the 22nd of May, B and D companies and battalion headquarters proceeded to shelters at Bois d'Etaille. And on the 23rd at Groundtown, A and C companies joined B and C companies in shelters at Bois d'Etaille. At Bois d'Etaille on the 24th of May to the 31st of May, 2nd Lieutenant H.J. Croft and a draft of 83 other ranks joined the battalion on the 25th of the 5th, 1916. 2nd Lieutenants P.D. Lucas, W.R. Hinton, L. Marsh joined the battalion on the 28th of the 5th, Lieutenant G.W. O'Brien and 2nd Lieutenant D.H.H. Logan joined the battalion on the 29th of the 5th. And then it goes on to when, I think it goes into the trenches then. On the 19th of June 1916, the battalion was relieved in trenches by the 2nd Highlander Gordon Highlanders and proceeded to shelters at Groundtown. In shelters at Groundtown, a draft of 10 other ranks joined the battalion on the 21st of the 6th, 1916. And the battalion proceeded to billets at Merricourt, and they were in billets on the 23rd and the 25th. So that was probably the first time they went to the trenches, wasn't it, in 1916.
So, are there any family stories or anything about what it was actually like in the trenches? Do you know if your grandfather ever spoke about it afterwards?
He didn't speak a great deal to us, but he obviously spoke to his sons, my uncles, and my mum. My mum and her younger brother were born after the war, but his elder sons, of which there were 4, remembered the things that happened. They remembered about him coming home when he'd lost his leg, and he was in a convalescent home in Fazakerley in Liverpool. And Grandma had to go and see him there, which was very hard for her because she had 4 young boys, plus not much money. She had to go on the bus and find it. And when she got there, she took her eldest son, Robert. And when she got there, they couldn't find him in the ward because he was so emaciated. And Robert said, "That's not my father. My father's a big chap." And he was so small, and he couldn't eat. And the orderly said the lining of his stomach had gone through him being sick and not well for so long. And she said, well, what can I do to help him? And he said, well, the officers have claret and egg white whisked in it. And she said, well, that's out of the question. I can't afford the eggs, never mind the claret. So he said, well, we're trying our best for him, but he does need some food. So she went home and related the story to all the neighbours. At that time, Petticoat Lane was just one row of cottages. There was nothing around it, all fields, and everybody was very close. Lots of people related to lots of other people. And by tea time, when she got back, they'd all clubbed together and bought a crate of claret wine and lots of eggs. And they took her back on the bus the day after. And one of the men who took her said to the orderly, if this goes down anybody else's throat, you're a dead man.
That's a brilliant story, isn't it? That's fantastic. Wow, that's really impressive.
They were all very good neighbours and obviously related in some way or another, you know. So that was good, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a fabulous story.
But he did also tell us sad stories about people. I remember him telling me about James Hill. He enlisted with him, and he said that the first time they went into the trenches and they went into battle, his hair turned grey. He said overnight he was terrified and his hair turned grey, and he was injured, fatally injured in one of the, when they went over the top.
He would have been quite, 31.
Yeah, because Grandad he didn't need, he was a pit man, so he didn't need to go. The story goes that they went out for a drink and got a little bit too much drink and decided they were going to go for King and Country. And Grandma gave him the rounds of the kitchen when he came back.
Bet she did. Too wrong.
Yeah. 4 boys she had at home and you didn't need to go, but there we are. That's a picture of Grandad. This picture I've got at home and it's massive, so I can't really carry it about. That's Grandad in his uniform before he went in.
And so when he came back, and obviously when he had convalesced and came back home, how did that affect? Do you know how that affected his life? I mean, he's lost. He
was never out of work. He couldn't go back down the pit, obviously. So he worked on top. I believe he was a night watchman and different things he could do on the top of the pit. And during the general strike in 1926, was that?
Yes. Yeah.
He'd four boys who were in the pit by then. And he was on strike as well, obviously. And he said, no, I'm not having them lazing around, no money coming in. So he opened a chip shop in a shed in his pen opposite 54 Petticoat Lane. And apparently they ran that for a good 2 years until Grandma's health went, and then they had to close it. But they used to do farthing bags of chips for the people who had no money. So he said he's not having them idle. He would make them, so they were peeling the potatoes and going for the fish and things like that. Yeah, he was never. He never played on the fact that he was disabled. He didn't. Very rarely walk with a stick until he was older.
Yeah.
He just used to. And he never had a proper leg. It was always what they call a peg leg with a ferrule on the end. As he said, the foot used to get in the way and he tripped up.
Right.
So he preferred peg leg.
Right.
And I got into a lot of trouble once because I was telling everybody at school when I was about 5 that my granddad only had one leg and nobody believed me. So I brought all the class home to have a look.
How did that go down?
I had to go to bed and I couldn't go out for a week.
Not impressed then?
No, Grandad wasn't impressed at all.
And did he ever go to any remembrance ceremonies or anything like that, or did he meet up with any of the veterans?
Yes, he did. There's a photograph here of the Limbless Society, and those are all soldiers who were in the war.
Was that taken in Wigan then, do you know?
No, I think it was Manchester. I'll just find Grandad for you. There he is.
Right there in the middle.
Yeah.
That's very smart.
Yeah. Yeah. They used to invite him to go down to London to the Armistice Day parade and the Sunday Remembrance parade. But with him being like he was, he didn't want to go in a wheelchair. He wouldn't go in a wheelchair. He never did. And he said, I couldn't manage to go round. He said, so I won't go. You know, he never did go. But because he said, I don't want to go in a wheelchair, and I would have to, you know.
Yeah, this is quite proud of him.
Yeah.
And could you show some of these other pictures
Yes.
there, these family pictures?
This one is Grandma and Grandad's wedding in 1900. It's a copy, obviously. The other one's very, very faded. The bride and groom are here. That's Grandad with his billycock hat on, and that's Grandma. Notice there's no fancy clothes, really, is there? They didn't.
Not at all.
Couldn't
It's
afford
Sunday
it.
best,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's right. Yeah, that was taken in the garden of a cottage which was in Petticoat Lane at the time. It's not there now.
And do you know what was your grandma's full name?
Grandma was Margaret Dickinson before she married Grandad. That's her father. Mother is not on because here she is. She's hiding. She's not on because she's pregnant with Uncle Harry, Great Uncle Harry, and she didn't want to be on the photograph. That's right. So there she is. Because Grandad was 21 when Harry was born. He was the last one of the family. Grandad was the eldest. Uncle Harry was the youngest. And when they got married, she was pregnant and she didn't want to be on the photograph. So that's that one. Yeah. This one is, this building is still there, but it looks nothing like this now. It's the only one left of the row of cottages, and it was like a public house, but not as such. It had a parlour and an off licence. And there's Grandma and her mother's there, and that's her father, stood in the middle. And they used to go and sit in the parlour and have a drink. But it was like a ladies' parlour, you know, it wasn't a public house. The men never went in, it was just for ladies to go in. So if they wanted a drink on a Saturday night when the men had gone off to the pub, they went into the parlour in the best and had a drink, very civilised, and came home. Just walked up the street.
Just round the corner.
Yeah, and that building is still there, but they've refaced it with modern brick, and it's such a shame because, you know, it was a nice building, but it's not there anymore. Yeah, it is, yeah. So I'm not sure what date that would have been taken, but possibly, I don't know, just before the war maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's quite early.
Quite early, doesn't it, with the dress? These are some cards that were sent from France. This is from Harry, who went in right at the end of the war as a boy, and he sent it to Maggie, who is my grandma, his sister-in-law, because he still lived with them at the time, you know, because his parents had died. And he still lived with Grandma and Grandad. Right. So that's a nice greetings from France. That's another one. Flowers of France.
What's that? Yeah, I've not seen one like that. Those are quite
Yeah, but that
I've not
one's
seen that one.
it's nice, isn't it?
Yeah. Has it got anything written on it?
No, it hasn't. They must have just brought it back. This is still in its envelope. And this is from Grandad to Grandma. And it says, "Dear wife, I am sending you this card as I can't send you anything else. So don't let your heart down for the children's sake. So good night, love, and God bless. God bless all, from your ever-loving husband." And lots of kisses.
That's lovely, isn't it? It's quite sad when it's quite poignant, aren't they, when you see things like that?
Yes. She must have been worried sick, mustn't she, about her? And the boys as well. The rascals, as I believe they were.
Do you know if she worked at all? Or
No, she didn't. No, she looked after the children.
Yeah.
This is from Private Thomas Wilkinson to his dear wife and children. That's all it says. It's written by him.
Yeah.
All things, wishes true. Where is this from? Oh, that's from Harry to his sister Maggie. It's not his sister, it's his sister-in-law, but he sent that. He must have been missing.
Sister Maggie.
Yeah, he must have been missing them all very much, mustn't he? He was only a boy.
Do you know how old he was when he signed up?
Well, he can't have been. He was born in 1901. So at the end of the war, he would be 17, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So he must have
Very
been about,
young.
very young, yeah. This is a Christmas one from your ever-loving husband, wishing you a Merry Christmas.
Is there a little note in there as well?
It just says hope and love. Hope. That's good, isn't it? Hope. There must have been hoping to come home. To my dear wife. This is a picture of, in much later years, in the 1950s, of Grandad and his family, his sisters, and his brother. Got another one too somewhere of them. That's it, that's the one.
Oh, so when's that, 30s or something?
It was in the 50s.
Oh, is it 50s? Right, I got that totally wrong. Yeah. Oh, right,
Yeah,
okay.
it's Elizabeth, Harry, Liza, Jane, and my granddad. No, that's my granddad, isn't it? That's Harry. He was always very smart, granddad. We've seen they're very straight.
Yeah. Is that's him at the front there, is it, on that one? Yeah. Yeah. Must be a hangover from the military.
Yes. Never went out without any, he was always smart. He used to go every Saturday night for a drink at the Bush Hotel at the top of Belgreen Lane. Dad, my father, was teetotal. He didn't drink at all, but he used to take him in the car and go back for him later. And he'd come back at 9:30, I remember that.
The same every time.
And he'd come back and he'd bring us Benson's crisps. And we were always under the table hiding under the cloth. And he'd poke his stick under and say, "Is there any little rabbits under it?" Got some crisps. We used to grab the crisps and get back under it. Same every week, we never changed. And this one, which I've got a bigger one of somewhere, I'm sure. That's Grandma and Grandad.
Oh, there are a few portraits on there.
And this one, it's taken at the top of Belgreen Lane, in Petticoat Lane, right at the back. And we know, because Mum has told us, that apparently it's a celebration for the children for the relief of Mafeking.
Oh, really?
I
That's
don't
early,
know when that was. 1901, was it? Something like that.
Yeah.
And there they are, like pretending to be little drummer boys and soldiers or whatever they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. That's great, that, isn't it? Just
So
a little pig helmet or something,
yeah,
isn't it, on there?
yeah. So I've no doubt that some of these are my relatives, but I've no idea because the lane, as I say, we were all related in some way or another, and I've not a clue
Yeah.
who they are
Yeah, that's
because
gonna
my
be very
mum
difficult to
didn't
trace, isn't it?
didn't
Yeah.
know, you know, because it's such a long time ago. Oh, this is Grandad's medal card. I can't make head or tail of it. I think it's in here that it tells you what he's got. Does that say victory?
Yeah, that'll be the victory medal. That's just says British. Not sure what that one says.
I should
Sure,
have
we
brought
can check
his
that out
medals.
for you.
He's got 3. My husband and my son are really, really interested in the First World War. And they've been over, well, I have as well, to France many, many times, to the places where Grandad was. And with St Peter's Church in Hindley, all the names on the boards for both the First World War and the Second World War, they've gone to France and wherever in the world, if they could, and taken photographs of the graves of these people and made a book showing where they are and all about them. And it's in St Peter's Church in Hindley.
Nice.
Well, both
So
books are.
Yeah.
So they're all the people who are on that board belonging to the parish. Yeah. So they went to Australia and they called it Singapore. So they went to the place at Singapore, and because it's one of the names on the board that is in Singapore.
That really is global, isn't it?
Yeah, and my son's been to Italy to find the obscure places where people have been buried because we were all over the place, you know.
Just to go back to your grandfather, are there any other stories or anything else that you would know about
His war years.
Yeah, his war years.
He just used to say that it was always very cold and damp, even on the warmest of days, because they were in the earth and it was wet. And he remembers his feet. He always used to say my feet were always bad. You know, he said we used to have to look at one another's feet, which I believe that was a regulation, wasn't it?
Is that to do with trench foot?
Yes. And you had to check someone else's feet.
Right.
You hadn't to do your own because you could say, oh, they're all right, but you had to check someone else's feet. And if you thought there was something wrong with them, you had to report it to the officer. And he said he didn't like that job, it was horrible. Checking somebody else's feet.
Someone who's sat in a trench for a few months is not very nice.
Yeah, but he was quite tough, you know, he was, very tough. And he had a friend 2 doors down who used to be a hussar on a horse, and he had a big handlebar moustache, and he used to come and he was round straight. His name was Mr. Harrison, and he used to sit on the couch with his stick in between them, you know, and he'd sit there reminiscing and watching the racing, and it used to drive Mum crazy because she wanted to get her work done and she couldn't because they were both there.
So was it they were reminiscing about the First World War?
Yeah.
That's because we've spoken to a few people and it's people have said, oh, my grandparents never really spoke about what they saw or what happened.
I don't think he did to us, but we used to hear him say things about, you know, to different people who came. He had visitors from the past, you know, who used to come and see him. We were usually sent out, you know, go and play while they had a chat, you know, but I was always nosy. I always wanted to know what was going on.
I'm glad you did. And how do you feel about his wartime record and the fact that he was injured and things?
Well, I feel he must have been a very strong-minded man to go through all that. And I believe that he was practically dead when he came back to England because he'd lost so much blood and weight. The story goes he was only 6 stone. That's why Robert didn't recognise him in the hospital. But to come back and live a full life and never be out of work, till you retire at 65. I think it's marvellous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very proud of him. Yeah, because he was a lovely man, you know. He was very stern. He didn't stand for any nonsense if we were making a fuss over anything, you know. He didn't wait for Mum telling us, you know, we got the stick pokes at us, you know. But he was very kind, you know, very kind. He used to say to me, if you clean my shoe, because he only had one shoe, I'll give you threepence. And he said, but you have to clean it twice a week. And I said, how long does that last for, Grandad? He said, oh, a few weeks. I said, no, that's not enough. And he said, well, go on then, and I'll give you threepence every fortnight. So that's what we agreed on.
Oh, he sounds like a really lovely man. Some great stories. Thank you.
Yeah, he was lovely. I never knew Grandma. She died before. She died when Mum was 12. So I didn't. I only ever had one Grandad because Dad's parents were both dead before I was born as well. So he was very special.
Yeah.
He lived with us all the time.
Yeah. Oh no, that's great. Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to say about him, or anything else you want to say about your family?
Just a moment. I brought this because I could carry this. This was his certificate when he was discharged from the army because of injury. And that's his badge, his cap badge.
Yeah. That's a fabulous thing, isn't it? Like, all the different Indian Empire colonies protect it. That's fabulous. Thank you for bringing
That's
that.
up on my wall with his
Right.
picture.
Yeah. Oh no, that's great.
I'm very proud of him.